My wife didn't ask for a divorce. She told me to accept her new relationship. She thought my silence meant surrender.
She didn't raise her voice when she said it, which somehow made it worse. "I'm not asking for permission," my wife said, standing by the kitchen island, arms folded. "I'm being honest. You can either accept it or stay out of my way." The words just hung there in the air. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. 21 years of marriage, and this was how she spoke to me, calm, prepared, like she'd rehearsed it. "Except what?" I asked, even though my chest already felt tight, already knew the answer. "My relationship," she replied. "With Mark?" She said his name like it was obvious, like this conversation was long overdue. I looked at the woman I'd built a life with, and I realized something terrifying. She had already moved on. This wasn't a confession. It was a presentation. "My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 45. I'm a project supervisor for a construction firm outside Chicago. I always believed in routine, in loyalty, in the quiet strength of just showing up every day. I thought my marriage worked because it wasn't dramatic. Apparently, that was the problem. Mark was her new regional manager. Charismatic, divorced, the kind of guy who talks about reinventing yourself while wearing a watch that costs more than my first car. I'd met him once at a company dinner. He smiled at me like I was just a placeholder. My wife, Lavra, had started changing slowly. New clothes, new phrases she'd picked up, long evenings, networking. When I asked questions, she called me insecure. When I backed off, she called me mature. Now she was offering me two choices like she was doing me a favor. "I need space to explore who I am," she said. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want transparency." "You want to sleep with your boss," I said. She let out a sharp breath. "Why do you always have to reduce things like that?" I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't, but because something inside me just went very still. The part of me that had spent years trying to smooth things over, to keep the peace, finally just sat down. "I'll think about it," I said. Relief flickered across her face. She thought she'd won. The next morning, she was humming while making coffee, kissed my cheek before she left for work. She even texted me a heart emoji at noon. She really believed I was adjusting to her new reality. I wasn't. That afternoon, I called an attorney. An old client of our firm had mentioned him once quiet, thorough, ruthless when necessary. He listened to the whole story without interrupting, then said, "If she's already making ultimatums, you're late, but not too late." So I started documenting everything. Expenses, late-night charges on the credit card, hotel stays that conveniently overlapped with my out-of-town jobs. Messages she forgot to delete. I didn't spy, I just paid attention. There's a big difference. We shared bank accounts, shared credit cards, shared a lot of assumptions. I opened a separate account and began moving money slowly. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, just enough to protect myself. Our son, Evan, was starting his final year of college. I paid his tuition for the entire year early, directly to the university. I wasn't letting anyone gamble with his future, and Lavar, she noticed none of it. She grew bolder. She'd leave articles lying around about modern relationships, talked about how monogamy was an outdated construct. One night, she even asked me if I thought love could be flexible. I just smiled and said I was still thinking. The night it all clicked into place was when she didn't come home at all. No call. No excuse, just a text at 1:12, that said, "Don't wait up." I didn't. I sat at the dining room table until sunrise. I wasn't angry, not even sad. I was just clear. This wasn't confusion. This was disrespect wrapped up in trendy self-help language. When she walked in the next morning, smelling like someone else's cologne, I handed her a cup of coffee. "You're being surprisingly calm," she said cautiously. "I've made peace with reality," I replied. She smiled, misunderstanding me completely. 3 days later, she was served divorce papers. At her office, she came home screaming. "You blindsided me," she shouted, throwing the envelope onto the counter. "After everything I shared with you? You gave me two choices," I said calmly. "I made a third." The tears followed, then anger. Then the bargaining. "I didn't mean it like that. We can still fix this." "You're being so dramatic." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just repeated the same sentence over and over. This goes through the lawyers now. She moved out within a week. Took her clothes, but left behind all her assumptions. The fallout was louder than our entire marriage had ever been. Friends called. Family asked questions. Lavra tried to control the story, but facts have a way of resisting spin. The financial audit revealed her misuse of our marital funds. The affair timeline didn't exactly help her narrative, and her job didn't survive the exposure. The judge didn't care about her podcasts or philosophies on modern love. He cared about evidence. When the divorce was finalized, I walked out with less furniture, less noise, but far more peace. When my son Evan came home for winter break, he hugged me tight. "I know this wasn't your fault," he said quietly. And that mattered more than winning anything. Months later, I moved into a smaller place near the river. It's simple, quiet, honest. I started sleeping through the night again. One evening, while unpacking the last box, I found an old photo Laura and me younger, laughing about something I can't remember. I didn't feel bitterness, just distance. Some people think strength is fighting to keep what's breaking you. They're wrong. Sometimes real strength is letting go before you disappear inside someone else's reinvention. I didn't lose my marriage. I reclaimed myself. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more.